Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's PCL Power Rankings. My name is Blue, and I'm your host for Console Corner, bringing you all the latest news and stats for the Paladins Console League. Remember, this is our first Paladins Console League. It's the first season. We just played the first matches of week 1 of the season. Super excited that it started. Super excited to watch all the matches that happened earlier today. Shout out to all the players and teams that made it into the league. So let's get right into it. Now remember, week 0 was last week's power rankings. That was the preseason rankings. Those rankings were based off of their group play and the qualifiers. This week's rankings are based off of last week's rankings by a small margin. Not the group play, not the qualifiers, last week's power rankings only, but mostly from the matches this weekend for the influence on these power rankings for this week. Let's get right into the power rankings. First 3 teams, not much of a shift. At number 1 is Elevate. They 4-0'd Warm-Up 2 games in a row, 4-0, 4-0. So they keep their dominance up. Warm-Up, Tier 2 team at the moment, in my opinion. They did seem like they could make a run towards Tier 1, maybe even take Elevate to a 3-game set. But unfortunately, they were unable to score a point against Elevate. Elevate showing their dominance. They are your number 1 in the power rankings this week. At number 2 is Flashpoint. They went up against Cyclone again. Cyclone still the best team with the chance to take down Flashpoint in that region. Flashpoint almost lost the first game. They beat them 4-3. Second game, a little different, 4-1 over Cyclone. So Flashpoint is still your number 2 team. At number 3 is Vexed Gaming. Now, Vexed Gaming 4-0'd Radiant, and they then beat them again 4-2. This was a little difficult putting Vexed at the 3 spot because Flashpoint is not as strong as they once were. I feel like they're still the second strongest team, and the only reason why that Vex is number 3 and not number 2 over Flashpoint is because Flashpoint versus Cyclone, I think, is a more competitive matchup than Vex versus Radiant at this time. Radiant was the second best team in Xbox EU, but as of lately, they've seemed to have fallen off. They lost Swiper back after week 1 of qualifiers, and I just feel like Radiant needs to make some adjustments in order to get back to the position they want to be in order to contest Vexed for that region and during this season for the LAN qualifier. At number 4 is Curse These Hands. Now, they lost their first match, and they were the only team. They faced Vampire Lord. That set was the only set to go to best of 3 out of all the matches this entire weekend. So that was interesting, and that kind of put a damper on Curse These Hands ranking, but I feel that they are still the 4th best team. They went up against a Tier 1 team in Vampire Lord. Vampire Lord, from what I know, had their full lineup. So I feel like Curse These Hands still deserves that 4 spot, and that could change next week. Everybody here in the rankings this week has played these teams in group stages, and now they played them again in week 1. So next week, everyone's playing someone different that they didn't play in group stages. So that'll be interesting to see, and the power rankings could take a huge shift next week. Curse These Hands lost 3-4, so it was a very tight match. It went 3-3. It could have been anybody's game there. Maybe one misplay, maybe one stagger cost them that match, but they came back 4-0'd Vampire Lord in the second game, and then in the third game they beat them 4-1. So they showed their dominance after they had a closely contested match or a closely contested game. So Curse These Hands is your number 4 team. At number 5 this week is Onslaught. They 4-0'd Happy Battle Cats 2 games in a row, reasserting themselves as the best team in their region. They took the 5th spot from Cyclone, and that was probably the hardest thing I had, was who would be number 5, Cyclone or Onslaught this week, and I went with Onslaught. The reason why Cyclone dropped down to number 6 is because Onslaught did beat Happy Battle Cats. Happy Battle Cats in qualifiers was a Tier 3 team. They made the league. They beat Bushwhakan Esports, so they became a Tier 2 team because of their play. So because Happy Battle Cats shifted from tier 3 team to a tier 2 team, and Onslaught beat them, that helped Onslaught because Onslaught beat a tier 2 team this time and 4-0'd them twice. Even though they beat them in the group stage, they had a map taken off of them, and it was a tier 3 team at the time. So Cyclone moved down to 6 because of this. They lost 3-4, and then they lost 1-4 to Flashpoint. So they weren't able to take a map off of Flashpoint like they've done on a regular basis. They weren't even, besides game 1, they weren't even close to getting a game off of Flashpoint. So I feel like they had the weaker performance between them and Onslaught this week. At number 7 is Zimmerframe. This team is really starting to stand out to me. They came into group play from qualifiers. They lose to OTP, but they still make it into the league. And then here they are beating OTP 2 games straight in a best of 3. They 4-0'd OTP game 1, and then game 2 they beat them 4-2. So this Zimmerframe team really standing out, making big plays, starting to beat some top teams. It'd be interesting to see them go up against Radiant and even Vexed as well. At number 8 is onii-chaners this week. Now, they were number 15, I think, last week. So they really took a big bump in the rankings, and they went up against Game Over. For those of you who are unaware, Game Over was previously the third leg. Obviously, you can't play with that name in the league. It's inappropriate. So onii-chaners goes up against them, and they 4-0 them 2 games in a row. So they asserted themselves as a dominant team in the PS4 NA region. So that was awesome to see that they regrouped, adjusted, made the changes they need to. They lost to this team in group play, so they were able to 4-0 them 2 games in a row. At number 9 is Vampire Lord. Vampire Lord, besides Cyclone, is the only 2 teams in the top 9 or top 10 that didn't win their sets this weekend. Vampire Lord is up so high because they went up against a tier 1 team in Kirsty's hands, and they took them to a 3-game set. And Vampire Lord is a tier 1 team themselves. They have great players. I feel they will adjust and pick themselves up as well. I feel like they're a little lackluster these past few weeks even, but we'll have to just wait and see how they continue to play throughout the season. They lost 4-3, or they won 4-3 in game 1. Then they lost 0-4 and 1-4 to Kirsty's hands. At number 10 from the PS4 EU region is Brutal Fissure. This team has really picked themselves up in the past weeks. In the past couple weeks, they had a tough time in the open bracket qualifiers in week 1 and week 2 because they had to face Flashpoint so early. I think it was quarterfinals each time, so that kind of put a damper on them in the point standings. They still made it into group play, and then here they are this week going up against YCTG, who has beaten Flashpoint before, so they're a pretty strong team. I'd still keep them at tier 2 as well as Brutal Fissure, but they beat them 4-1 and then 4-3. So they're not above Vampire Lord and they're not above Cyclone because they had a little bit of a tough time against YCTG. Those 2 teams are equally ranked as well. So Brutal Fissure at number 10, breaking into that top 10. They're 1-0 in the league, so that's exciting to see, and I'm looking forward to seeing Brutal Fissure try and climb up the ladder throughout the season as well. At number 11 is Radiant. I feel like they're just losing momentum here. They lost 0-4 and then 2-4 to Vex. They did take 2 points off of them, but this team has taken a map off of Vex before, so I feel like they need to adjust and pick it up. At number 12 is Warm Up. They got demolished by Elevate, 0-4 and 0-4. Game 1 and Game 2 respectively. So I feel like they need to pick it up. They're a good team. They have a good roster. They did make a roster change recently because of scheduling issues. They had to let go of Cirques, and in doing so, Garcia moved to the support role, and they brought in Sorrow for that frontline role. So it'll be interesting to see how they adjust with their new lineup in the league. at a slower pace, as in, they have more time to mend together, more time to create that chemistry after that roster change. At number 13 is OTP. They have fallen quite a ways this week. They got 4-0'd by Zimmer Frame in the first game, and then they lost 4-2. And according to some reports, Ninja Zen is leaving the team. And I've talked so many times about how Ninja Zen and Naiju is the best tank duo in Xbox EU, maybe even top 3 tank duos in all of console Paladins. So it'll be interesting to see if Ninja Zen leaves, how that affects the roster, who they'll bring in, how it affects their play and their competitiveness. So that'll be interesting to see. But OTP at number 13 this week. At number 14 is Game Over. That's the third leg previously. They went up against onii-chaners. In the group play, they beat them. But group play doesn't go into effect here. So onii-chaners beat them 4-0, 2 games straight. Game Over. Couple roster problems from what I've seen and heard around the league. So that could be a potential issue for them. I know they're looking for a frontline main right now. So it'll be interesting to see who they bring in, what roles have to be swapped or what roles need to be filled, and what they can do to pick themselves back up and be able to compete with the teams that they have beaten and hung in there with before. At number 15 is YCTG. They got beat by Brutal Fissure, 4-1 and then 4-3. Second game was a little close. That's why they're ranked 15th instead of 16th here, as they were last week. And I feel like YCTG just needs to find their chemistry. I know they beat Flashpoint with 2 subs, so maybe they just need to keep working and keep scrimming, keep practicing with their main roster guys, because I feel as if they could make a potential run for the LAN qualifier. At number 16 is Happy Battle Cats. Now remember, they moved from Tier 3 in qualifiers to Tier 2 entering the league as a team competitively. They took a map off of Onslaught in the group play, but here they are this week getting 4-0'd 2 games in a row. I can't imagine how fast those games were, as Onslaught has put their foot on the pedal, and it doesn't look like they're going to let up anytime soon. So Happy Battle Cats is your number 16 in the power rankings this week. All right, everyone, that's been your power rankings for this week. Remember, this is week 1 because it's the end of week 1. Last week was week 0 because those power rankings were before the season started. So next week will be with week 2's power rankings after the week 2 matches have been played. You guys remember to like, share, subscribe. If you have any questions, just drop them below. If you have any comments, just drop those below as well. Make sure you hit thumbs up on the video. More content coming towards you. Remember, we have the podcasts on Fridays. We have Console Corner's live show on my Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/realBluTV. That's REALBLUTV, just like the channel here. That is every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And those videos are also on YouTube the night that they are streamed live. So once we do the show live, we have recorded it and we put it up on YouTube for those of you who have to go to work or go to school or miss the show for any other reason. Remember, guys, to keep grinding, and console is the best.